right, I'm here with Jess, the former founder of Minnow, who recently got acquired for seven figures. Jess, how you doing today?
I'm well, Andrew. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So again, huge congrats on the acquisition. But for those that may not know you, do you want to do a brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah, so from Philadelphia, originally go Birds. I moved out to Los Angeles for film school. Went through a bachelor's program at Will Marymount University, studied production. Worked for about a decade in film and development production, helming champion movies primarily, not a lot of TV. And then in 2018, there was a little bit before that, probably 2017, there was a lot of chatter about Disney essentially starting their own streaming service to compete with Netflix, and then all the other studios were starting those conversations as well. And I thought it'd be a good opportunity to take my background in film and television development and create an aggregation platform, B2C primarily, at least in the beginning, to aggregate those channels and create a market for people to find and discover new content. So my background in film and television kind of inspired the company and the product for Minnow.
Nice. When did you like what was the moment like when you decided to start this business? Was there like a day you were like, this is a huge market opportunity. Let's go after this.
I mean, I'm a seasoned entrepreneur who has failed so many times, and so like, but that we didn't like. I built a lot of startups with college friends. I think I've applied like 8 or 9 times to YC with various ideas over the years, and it's just
I assume you just
that's right.
can so if I understand you correctly, I might be able to relate. Did you just kind of get the idea and just start running with it?
Exactly. There was not a whole lot of like prep and thought that went into it. It was more of this is a consumer pain point that I see being potentially a long-term problem for people is too many applications to subscribe to, too much content. How do I actually find stuff? Something apart from search, discovery is such a big problem. It still is a big problem. As we can get into later, the problem with all of these aggregators is business model, and that's the big tough nut to crack.
Nice.
So yeah, there was not a whole lot of thought that went into this design to start building. Let's see if people like it.
That's such good advice. I always say just like you don't need that extra feature. You don't need just ship whatever you have, and the market has feedback that you just have to hear.
Right.
It's always funny that how naive entrepreneurs can be, and that's just you gotta get
Or some traction. So yeah, I love design. Like I love beautiful design, UX, UI. Like I love that. I love that process of working with talented designers, but the same time, like our first version, our beta was like just a website. And we just needed to prove that we could do what we were saying we were doing, which was creating deep links that could connect to the content on the platform and start the autoplay sequence, as opposed to just like saying, oh, this is on this channel. Like, good luck going to find it, So we needed to prove that we could develop a deep link model that worked. And that was like the very first question out of every VC's mouth too is, where are you with the technology? Yeah, they didn't even like when we were raising our pre-seed round, it was very much like, does the technology work? And then you could easily just pull up the website and show them that it worked. It wasn't pretty by any means, but at least the technology worked. We didn't have much traction at all back then. It's like 2018, but at least we could show them like, oh yeah, like link to Netflix, link to I think it was like Crunchyroll and a couple other platforms that were exploding back then. Now obviously it's a very different ecosystem.
Nice. Let's take a little step back. Tell me what problem did Minnow solve? I know you mentioned aggregators, but just so I can wrap my head around it in terms of
yeah. So you sit down on your couch after a long day, you crack a beer, and you just kind of open up Netflix and start scrolling. You open up Hulu, start scrolling, Disney Plus, start scrolling, and it's like there's no playlist. Unlike Spotify or Apple Music, you open it up and you know what you're going to listen to right away, and you get great recommendations right away. But with film and TV, the sampling time with music is like 3 to 4 seconds. You're like, I kind of like this or not. Film or TV, like you have to watch like 20 minutes or something to figure out if you like it. So you do that 2 times and you're done for the night. Like you're not going to keep watching something. So sampling doesn't work the same way in film and TV that it does music. And so the content discovery became the problem, that hair on fire problem that we really wanted to solve. And a part of solving that is building a robust recommendation algorithm. And everyone has their own internal but no one did it horizontally across all of them. And that's what we tried to solve for.
That's amazing. I have spent many nights scrolling through Netflix
Still,
and
still to the day.
and turning to my wife and being like, "There's nothing to watch." That's is a weird sort of
Right.
like psychological thing, and you're going through like 100 things, and you're like, "I don't like it. I don't like it. I don't like it." So
Yeah.
I don't watch too much TV, but yeah, no. And then also switching over to
Yeah.
Hulu. What does Hulu got? I don't know. So that
And
okay.
then 30, 40 minutes goes by and you still haven't found anything. And then it's already like 10, 10:30. And you're like,
That
screw it.
that's kind of where I don't watch a lot of TV. I'm just kind of like,
There you go.
all right, scrolling fatigue. So okay, I get the problem, and now this to me, this is like a meaty big problem because you're working with Netflix and Hulu. How did you what did your go to market look like in terms of getting this in the hands of
Um,
customers or
so,
usage?
yeah, good question. So number one was making sure the technology worked. And then number two was building out. So unlike what I would recommend for most entrepreneurs, is like just build and ship the first version. We had a competitor, a very successful competitor that did that. They built just for mobile and they did really well on mobile. But people don't really watch content on mobile, long form content on mobile. And so, like, if you're on the couch, you're not going to be watching Netflix on the thing, especially if you have web on the phone. If you have a message, not how to. So, but they did it. They acquired users that way really well. And so, what we wanted to do for our GTM early on was let's develop for everything. So, like, let's develop for iOS and Android. Let's develop for CTV. So, Apple TV, Android TV, and it was not Fire TV. Let's develop for Roku. Let's develop for web. And then let's develop for tablets, like let's adapt for tablets. So anywhere where you're watching your content, you'll also be able just to pull up your playlist or whatever, the algorithm of who you are or where you're trying to watch. And that's a very expensive technological way to launch a product. And we
Yeah.
have to
So
raise,
I
yeah, we
I
raised 6 figures to do that.
Yeah, I was listening to all those platforms, and my prior business we had native iOS, Android, and then we had a web application to build the mobile app, and it was
Yeah.
a headache. It was such a headache. Keep submitting apps to I like Apple was submitting the app to Google. So
No, and it's just like such the wrong way to go about launching a startup these days, and I get that. But we also wanted to do it in a way where everyone could experience that joyful moment of like surfacing content that you knew you wanted to watch on whatever platform you wanted to watch it. And so there's a lot of friction if you find that Netflix movie that you want to watch on your phone, and then now all of a sudden you have to go and like search with your TV remote on your TV to watch it. So that was too much of a disconnect there. We really wanted it to just deep link. You click watch now on Netflix, and it would take you to the Netflix app, or watch now on Hulu, it would take you to Netflix, the Hulu app, and watch it. Right. So we wanted that magical moment to happen, and I think that's why we had success. Is because we did spend the time. It took us probably about a year to develop the deep link protocol, the back end work, and then developing all of those different front ends.
nice. So how did you? So tell me about the distribution channel. How did you get this in the hands of users?
So I'd say there's probably two distribution channels that worked for us on the B2C side. One was organic social, and the other was PR. Because we had developed on a big channel, we felt that it was probably worth it to spend on PR. So I'll speak to that first. There's a lot of like controversy on whether you should pay a PR firm for launching or not. We didn't really want to be on TechCrunch. We wanted to be on a more mainstream periodical. And we got our first press break from Mashable. And then we got a follow up from Fast Company. And those two pieces, and we worked with the PR firm Rogers and Cowan. In Los Angeles, they're right down the street. They're amazing.
Nice.
Had a really good relationship with Rogers and Cowan. They gave us good rates and they pitched like crazy. And our Mashable piece and our Fast Company pieces did really, really great for that organic reach right out of the gate. And because we had spent so long developing the tech and because we were everywhere, it was once people signed up, they downloaded it on multiple applications and they were using it on multiple applications, and we could see that live. And like everything, you peak your downloads right away, and then you plateau. But the peak was so high, like on launch day, we broke into Apple's top 200 apps on launch day, and we never got out of that until we sold. So it was pretty great. I mean, it fluctuated a lot on that list, but But it was so great just to have that organic reach right out of the gate. I guess that's more of a paid reach, but it was great. And then the other thing that the other channel that really worked for us was Instagram. We like to pride ourselves and say we built one of the fastest growing film and TV meme accounts on Instagram. And at its peak, we had over 600,000 followers, including big celebrities. And we're promoting new movies on platforms, old movies on platforms, things that are coming, things that are going, creating this great dialogue of comments in the comment section. And at our peak, when we were like, I had a team of 3 guys just managing that one Instagram in San Antonio. And at our peak, we probably were getting about 300 to 400 downloads per day, completely organically, just because we were talking about movies. And then people would be like, oh, this is a cool account. You go to the link, you see that they like aggregate. And so you download the app and try the app. So that was a really great channel for us. But we tried everything else too, paid search, paid social, paid search. SEO wasn't really big for us because there are a couple aggregators that do all SEO, like some competitors, and so they've kind of taken that off the table. We didn't want SEO, but everything else we really competed with, did really well.
Yeah, press is one of those things. My previous startup was also press heavy, and it's just such a great way to build like brand credibility quickly, especially if you hit the right audiences. And I remember Mashable. We were featured in Mashable once. Also Fast Company, so it can be a really, really effective strategy.
Awesome.
But you have to have a good story. I think that's where a lot of founders, kind of break down in terms of, good PR strategy. Like you were solving a problem that, is mass market, where even I can relate to it. Even my wife could relate to it. My son could relate to it. I already sound old enough, but you get my point. It's a good. You got to have a good story, and you did. So that was very smart of you. And I love also the Instagram account where you're indirectly talking about your product. You're just really connecting with customers of your product, and it's kind of a create value, and that value can just be entertaining. Like you're just making people laugh. You're just capturing their attention.
We rarely talk about the app. Even in stories, like whenever we would do a new feature, like whenever we publish a new feature on the apps, we would always highlight it in stories, but they typically did so poorly compared to the memes and everything else that we're doing that we're like, it's not worth it. Like people will find us because we are posting 3-4 times a day on Instagram and doing stories every day and live streaming and just talking about, my whole team loved movies. That was like a prerequisite of working at Minnow. You really have to be a cinephile.
Nice. I love it. Yeah. The meme accounts, I think that's a great move, because it's such an easy way to, especially go after, really broad audience, because again, people love to laugh. Everyone loves movies. And if you're able to kind of tap into that and then, attach your product to it, you're just creating so much brand awareness.
Totally great. And memes, like, I don't know if it works for everybody's brand, but memes typically get like the most engagement. As far as like Facebook's algorithm goes, like if you get, the more shares you get, the more likely you're going to be featured on that Discover page. So creating content that is inherently shareable, not necessarily the most amount of likes or comments, but like creating content that people share with their friends on the social platforms is so valuable to that algorithm. And memes, for some reason, people love sharing memes. So we grew really fast. I mean, I think we went from 0 to 600,000 in like 2.5 years. So
oh wow.
And that was algorithmically, for a while you go, 100, but then like when you're at the 600 level, like you're fluctuating thousands of people every day, both up and unfollows.
But that's incredible. Yeah. I mean, I always say, no one remembers a boring brand, and, like have fun with your marketing, and like, don't be boring, because no one remembers like, here's my ebook, making customers like laugh and feel some sort of emotion, like, can really, really drive, brand affinity.
And at that point, we were only B2C. Like, I just wanted to develop a relationship with our customers. And that was such a great channel for just communicating with where they were. Like, a lot of people still turn to Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for content recommendations, And so what are their friends talking about? What are their friends excited? And so we built native, like sharing features on the app. So that if you found a movie that you really liked, just share it from our app to Instagram, and it would deep link to that content on our page. And so it's just like we tried to tie the two very tightly together as often as we could, and it worked great. It's a good strategy for us.
Very nice. But so now wondering, what made you decide to sell the company?
COVID happened, and you would think the opposite happened, where people are at home watching how exactly need places to surface. But very quickly, we were VC backed. We needed to keep raising money in order to maintain this free service and platform that we were providing people. So it very quickly became apparent that we needed to pivot into a B2B strategy, something that we could actually make money from. We didn't have 100 million users. We couldn't monetize via ads. And that also was kind of getting a little shady. Facebook was getting a lot of flack during that time for monetizing on user data. So we pivoted to a B2B strategy where we saw an opportunity with a company like Nielsen and Cantor to create like a streaming big data opportunity for investment companies to learn what people were streaming, what people were subscribing to and unsubscribing to. Specifically that metric that is so valuable to people, especially if you're in the financial services industry and want to know whether Netflix is going to have a good or bad quarter according to analyst expectations. And so we had this robust data set of people telling us what they were subscribing to and what they were unsubscribing to and why. And if we could build a B2B platform that enabled us to kind of extrapolate all that information and learn whether, is Netflix going to beat analyst expectations this quarter or not? There were like 10 to 15% swings every quarter in stock prices of like Comcast, Netflix, Apple, Amazon. Specifically, all these analysts were just very interested to know how the streaming businesses were doing. This is like 2011 or 10, 11, that sort of thing. And so it was just like a really good time to be pivoting to a B2B. We were able, luckily, to like raise our last round of funding in order to make that pivot. I think a lot of our cap table was interested in seeing us succeed. I mean, there was a lot of competition in the aggregation space back then, but people thought that there was still an opportunity for there to be like a winner take all mentality. And so we were encouraged to make the pivot. We did the pivot, and Andrew, I just shot myself in the foot. Like I realized very quickly that the more we turned into like a B2B SaaS product where your like hedge fund or investment company could subscribe to our data, the more people that pay to subscribe to this alpha, the less alpha it's actually providing in the marketplace. Your data becomes priced into the model. And so we made a decision. I don't have any financial services background. At the time I did. So when we made the pivot, it seemed like a great idea. Our SaaS product's selling for like high 5 figures a year. So it's like a really good business. And you're getting sales. Obviously, it's great. But the more sales you have, the less valuable the data set is. So the less value, the less, you can't keep increasing the price of the product. And so it very quickly became apparent to me what we had built was like a tool of a company, not a full company itself, because we hadn't quite cracked that business model. And I think for founders, understanding holistically and being able to step back from your day to day and be like, how have I built a product that someday could be fully profitable? Not something that's tied to this spigot of money, VC venture coming in, propping us up. But can I see this becoming a profitable venture? Is a question that everyone should ask. And at that time, when we asked it, the answer was no. And so we knew then that after a successful pivot to a new business model, that it was time to start looking for buyers.
I love that reflection in terms of, because it's startups, like not everyone is going to be a $1 billion company. Statistically, you have a 0.1% chance. And I think even, just to, kind of maybe segue, the worst thing, one of my least favorite things to see is when entrepreneurs get stuck in companies where it's very clear that, this isn't going to be, a multi-billion-dollar company or, whatever it may be. The situation is clearly showing, you built a really great business. It's probably in your best interest to sell and then just take another swing at something.
Right.
So just that reflection in terms of understanding. I had a similar company. It was a crypto company, and we built a protocol to make. Do you want to hear the story?
Yes.
All right. So it was my second startup. I mean, I started like 10, but like I count like 3 as real ones. But what we built was a protocol to speed up times on the Ethereum blockchain. And if you haven't noticed, or if you're into crypto, it's still slow. So we chipped away at it. But we got to a
point. That side. No, by the way, it's like if you're still into crypto, it's October 6th, 2023. It's like, that's probably good for everything. Like, are you still in the crypto?
Yeah. So and then what happened? We also got hit with what I call a super bug. So a super bug is when something just so insane happens to what you're building, and it's just usually Mark Andreessen has like a really great post on super bugs if anyone wants to check that out. But essentially, what happened was 2018, the SEC comes out with guidelines saying that what we're building, the first application was going to be essentially like a decentralized Coinbase, and so we kind of had to come, let's call it like a, sort of meeting of the minds as a team. I just said, hey, like, how much you guys like crypto? You want to go to jail over this? And so we put in a proactive call to the SEC and said, because what happened was they deemed everything on the Ethereum blockchain as security. So we were essentially working to build an unregulated securities exchange, very illegal, federal crime. And so, but when we started, they were, commodities, so that you're allowed to trade commodities and not securities. So once that happened, we quickly found out that we're not in the technology business, we're in the regulatory compliance business, and the capital to take the business to market would be, we estimate around like 10 million and then 2 years because we'd have to get a broker dealer license, money transmitter license. Yeah. We were just like, no, we don't like crypto that much. So what we did was we positioned the company to sell, and we took the technology and then ended up selling it to a strategic buyer, someone who had the regulatory compliance. But we could have been like, we'll just keep charging through and and the company would have just died. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you told that story because there will come full circle with the buyer of Minnow. They are a licensed broker dealer. They have this. They've gone through all of that legwork that you're talking about, and they usually are great buyers for fintech tools. I would say that what you built in the crypto space was a great tool that your buyer was able to repurpose for their own benefit and their own kind of roadmap they're developing. Similarly with what we were building, someone saw what we were building in the community and the data set that we had and said, oh, that's valuable. Let's bring that and plug it into our own product suite and just absorb it. And I think, you've been through that journey. I never had a conversation about becoming like a broker dealer and dealing with licenses and that, like hitting minimums with clearinghouses and stuff like that. There wasn't even a discussion about that.
Oh, it's wild. You got to have like a chief compliance officer. The funny joke amongst everyone I've talked to that are broker dealers, they're like, oh, the SEC is my co-founder. Basically, every email, every transaction has to be reported. Yeah, FINRA, it's no joke. And so we just and I was young too. I was I'm 34. I was 30 when I was running this company. So like learning that stuff, I was like, this isn't for me. And it was a very technical project. But tell me about the acquisition. I want to hear how'd you find the buyer? How did
so when you know you want to sell, you kind of just put on your sales hat, and I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast, listens to your podcast, like they are in sales in some capacity, and you just scout the marketplace. And so I found you guys as like a marketplace to be super helpful. I can put my data room together in a way that's very clear to someone that is in the market to buy a startup. And so just listing everything else out on acquire.com was really helpful for us to organize our thoughts in our data room. And then in addition to the acquire.com listing, we also built out like a Dropbox, like a private Dropbox folder. And I just hit LinkedIn and would find business development execs, senior business development execs at companies that may be interested in our data set and in our product suite. So, you come up with like a long list and then you just start cold emailing people saying, hey, this would live really well in what you're building. And here's a deck that I built custom for your company and how you could integrate all the stuff that we've built. And that takes a lot of work. Like you have to build a deck for every single pitch. But I think of like 15 custom decks that we need for every pitch. I wrote this down. We had 6 in-person meetings with large companies, everyone from like Fortune 500 to some of the largest nonprofits in the world that could benefit from the technology that we built. So 6 in-person meetings translated into 3 real diligence meetings where they would bring in like their chief financial officer, they would bring in their chief counsel, and they would look at our deck, they'd look at our tech, they'd open up our hood, rummage around. And of those three real proper diligence meetings, we got one term sheet that we ended up closing. So that was kind of our process. And the entire from moment we realized we want to sell was around 13 months.
Nice job. I mean,
Yeah.
one thing I love about that is just in terms of the strategy, in terms of, proactive reach out to buyers and having like specific decks. Because yeah, when you approach a strategic buyer, you definitely want to have like, a pitch that's like, this is specifically for like this fits in like a puzzle piece. And I'm going to tell you
Yeah.
why. Like you build the
Yeah.
business case for, the head of business development, and I'm sure it moves up to the CFO and then eventually the CEO. So well done on that, man. That's awesome.
I mean, I'd never been through it before. I didn't know if there was a proper way to do it. But we had success with it doing it that way. We got a lot of no's, but we had like a 30% close rate, 40% close rate to it just as first meeting, like an in person, not even just like a Zoom person coming out of COVID. And so that was great. And being in person was great. Just kind of explain things. You can feel their tone of voice, whether they like certain elements, whether they dislike certain elements. And that was really helpful because then you can always do a pitch as you go on the fly. And I mean, we did a 50% close rate from meeting to actual diligence and like follow up, 2 or 3 follow ups. And so it was an efficient process. It takes a long time, which I don't think I was expecting. And while this process is going, you still need to fund operations. Like you can't just stop paying your AWS bill. So we ended up keeping the company afloat until we found the buyer, and then we identified what elements of the company that they were most interested in, and we ended up doing like an asset sale to the company.
You brought up go ahead. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No.
I was going to say, you brought up a really, really, really just great point in terms of like when you're speaking to buyers, understanding what they're interested in, just like in sales. One buyer is going to look at, financials, one's going to look at a specific part of the tech, one's maybe interested in the team, but just understanding like what's super important to them and just honing in on that and just keep honing in on that and just keep honing in on that. Like that is so key. And sometimes you just ask, you just be like, what part about the business do you like the most? Are you a financial buyer, strategic buyer? Do you see this integrating? Do you see this as like, a standalone product? Like just understanding like how they would see this position in their business can again really help you like strengthen like that business case and like also in my opinion during negotiations because what hot buttons to like really press to get the buyer to take action.
Yeah. And then the one like insight that I found kind of intriguing, I did not coin this, someone else said this. It's like and this is appropriate for like fundraising as well, like if the person that you're talking to is looking for a reason to say yes, then they're probably out. Like if they're looking for a reason, they're like, tell me why I should buy this again. Like what is it? Like if they're looking for a reason to say yes, they're done. They're out. Just kind of end the meeting, go get yourself a coffee. If they're looking for a reason to say no, it means they're already in. Like they made a decision and they're like, all right, like de-risk this for me more. Like when I buy you, like what's gonna happen? Like they're looking for a reason to say no. And so they've already said yes. So you just need to get over that goal. Like you're already there. You're at 99%.
Yeah, I say that all the time. Like a big part of selling your business is de-risking it for the buyer. And sometimes you have to like hand it, like spoon feed it. Like, hey, this is the stuff that, could go wrong. This is what transition looks like. This is how we can integrate. This is the timeline. This is the product, all that stuff to just de-risk the business for them so they don't have to assume. Because if they assume these things without speaking with you, they're going to find a way to say no. So being able to, rebuttal any sort of objections like that, that's a good quote. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, I found it to be very true, even in fundraising, but I'm sure it's true in sales. This wasn't like a sales heavy business. We never got to that. But yeah, I mean, do you want to hear a little bit about like the legalities? I'm not going to get into too many specifics, obviously, but like, about like post signing the term sheet. I feel like there's not much context out there for entrepreneurs that like get to that stage or know what to do after that stage.
Yeah.
I'm sure Acquire.com. I mean, I'd love to know also what Acquire.com does at that point. But we didn't sell through Acquire.com. We sold directly to the buyer. So it's probably a little different as the services you provide.
Yeah, tell me.
But so when we had this signed term sheet, we our engineers joined forces with their engineers, and we started integrating all the data sets and, kind of changing the credit cards on the AWS, that sort of thing. Once the purchase agreement was signed, but we went back and forth with counsel to make sure that the purchase agreement was done. The acquiring company didn't want, there was probably 25 names on our cap table at the point of sale, and the acquiring company didn't want 25 new names on their cap table. And so we rolled everybody up into like an SPV LLC, and they acquired that one LLC. So it's just like a super clean way to kind of do that transfer of assets. And then from the buyer standpoint, it's great because they have one line item on the cap table with a certain equity position. They own all of the assets. As far as filing taxes go, we sold to a hold company. It's like it's a private equity firm, so they have multiple entities. So one more entity wasn't an issue for them. And it was just a super clean way to do it. It did take some time, but and I forgot to mention we had to convert the safe notes too because we only raised money on safes. So we converted the safes. You share that worksheet with all of your investors. Say your safe at this amount converts at this amount. You will now own this many membership shares of the LLC. And then that's kind of how it goes. You share all that math with them. They share with their counsel. Everyone shares off one. You get signatures from the majority. Deal's done. It's a lot of work. It probably took us like 3 months just to do the actual transaction. But when it was done, it's really great from the buyer standpoint because it's just, again, one line.
Yeah, I've seen that before. I mean, typically, acquisition that flows through Acquire.com. So we streamline all the legal docs. And so from LOI to asset purchase agreement, and then we have an integration with escrow. But for larger deals, let's call it, 7 figures and above, we have third-party attorneys that will loop in to work as the escrow agent to work through, like if you have a messy cap table or if there's employee contracts that need to be reassigned, like the legality part around that is so, like reps and warranties. I'm sure you had a lot of fun with that.
Gosh.
I remember doing reps and warranties when I sold my first company, and I just said, talk to me like I'm 5. And it just felt like I had to like write down everything I've done wrong in my life. Like one time this customer complained, one time this happened, so
now we can just ask ChatGPT to summarize complex legal docs, which is so nice. It's like, I don't have to say that sentence to a lawyer. I think it's like, ChatGPT, talk to me like I'm 2. Like, just spell this out for me. What's the issue?
Yeah. I mean, that's, I feel like that's already here. But as the deal gets bigger, it's really, it can be, there's so many moving parts, there's so many stakeholders, and you want to make sure that it's done correctly. So looping in, professional legal help, especially on the higher end, can really, make or break a deal. Because also on the other end, we see deals, unfortunately fall through from time to time at like the 11th hour. And so having someone just kind of, bring everything together, especially for the buyer, knowing that, this deal is, let's just call, proper due diligence has been done, legality issues have been cleared. That's crucial to making an acquisition go through, because without it, any moment a buyer can pull out, and a big reason buyers pull out is, they start to see something that, doesn't add up, or there's just something that just seems like it's going to be too much of a headache. So getting in front of that is probably my best advice. And if you are selling for, 7 figures or above, definitely loop in legal counsel as quickly as possible.
And if it's, even better, and they don't necessarily represent you, but even if the acquiring company has counsel in-house, so you can save on a lot of that speculative work, like you said. So if it does fall through, you're not left on the hook. Or even better, if you can just put that in LOI, where like the acquirer company is doing their deals. That would be an ideal situation. For us, the acquiring company had legal counsel in-house. And so it was a straightforward process until we had to bring in our attorneys. But they drafted all of the language. And so we just did contract, which probably saved me 90% of our legal bill for the transaction.
Nice. What was your legal bill, if I can ask? You can just say like ballpark, or you can say no comment.
So we were represented at Wilson Sonsini. Wilson Sonsini just did contract review. So it wasn't like they didn't draft any legal form. So it was just a good situation all around.
Nice. I had
I'll say it was only 5 figures as opposed to what could have been, very, very high 5 figures or low 6 figures for sure.
Yeah, mine was 170,000, but we hired like Pillsbury, and it was over 1,000 an hour. And they told me one time, and this is a funny dumb tidbit. This is a company I sold when I was 29. So they told me like every time you email us, we have to bill you for 15 minutes. And it was a Friday night and I just was on my phone and I just replied back in 4 emails like, thank you for letting me know. Just because I thought it was funny, but it ended up costing me like $1,000 to do that.
Right.
Uh, but wrapping this up,
Wow.
Jess, this story has been awesome. I guess if you had, going through all this, like, I love just the story of what you built and how you were able to weave this into, a successful acquisition. If you had to give just 3 pieces of advice to founders, looking to get acquired, what do you think those would be?
Break down the most valuable assets of the business, and then kind of talk to friends that are not a part of your day to day and kind of talked about those assets in particular. Like when we broke down like our Instagram account, 600,000 people, like that's valuable to a brand. And either we're going to piecemeal this and sell it off individually, or we're going to find a buyer for everything. Fortunately, we did find a buyer for everything. But if all of your assets individually are worth something, and probably the premium to buying everything together, unless you can find that perfect buyer. We were lucky. We found someone who wanted everything. But if you're in a situation where you're ready to sell, you could probably find a premium for every different asset that you find. So number one, I'd say is break down those assets, determine a value for them in as far as you think of it. Add a premium, and then potentially go find buyers for individual assets that way. Number two is probably go in person. Talk to biz dev people in person. It's their job to scout acquisitions. So like they want to do partnerships, acquisitions. They want to buy. Like go talk to them.
Yeah, and they're putting their neck out on for you. So
Yeah.
like, there's a quote that one of my mentors said. Maybe well, fuck it, it's my podcast. He said it's really hard to fuck over a person when you've shaken their hand. I don't know how many people would agree with that, but he would always tell me that. He's like, go meet him, like trust me. Like I always say,
Yeah.
it's really hard to fuck over a person that you've just met in person. Like there's just something about sitting down together, just really like getting to know the person can actually really. It's the same with enterprise sales, getting the trust of that person, because that's sometimes what they're really leaning on the most is trust.
If you're in a position where you're thinking about selling your company, you're in a really good spot. Like you made it so much further than most entrepreneurs that just have to wind down operations. You know what I mean? Like if you've built something that you think is valuable enough for someone to actually pay you money or equity in order to buy that thing, congrats to you. Like go find those business development people that are excited about what you built and want to either integrate it or just learn how you built it, and then brainstorm together. But yeah, number two is definitely go in person. And then number three is don't be afraid to spend the sweat equity or the design equity. Do custom decks for people where you really just spell it out for them. Like don't think that they're going to be business development people are not necessarily like just spell it all out for them. Understand their business goals and what they're trying to do as much as you understand company, and just say this asset that I own is going to fit in, like you said, Andrew, as a puzzle piece into what you are. It makes so much sense. It's not, you're not a snake oil salesman. Like it's a win-win. Like we want to bring everything cohesive.
Yeah. 1+1.
Solve a real pain point that your customer.
1+1=3. Those are the best acquisitions.
That's right.
Right on. Well, Jess, what are you up to now? That's kind of final question.
So I have a 4-year earnout with the acquired company. So I'm working for them. As a tip-in, I'm doing a Christmas market with my dad. We love Christmas, so we're doing that as well. But
nice.
For the acquiring company, just having fun. But for the acquiring company, they're building a AI-powered trading platform that will rival the largest online brokerages that exist today. And they were interested in our proprietary data sets, even in our user interface designs that we built for all of those platforms. We can repurpose probably 80% of that to their solutions that they're building. So, Andrew, I've completely pivoted. I am away from film and TV, and now I wear my, I'm not a registered, broker, but definitely bringing everything I've learned through 5 years of going through this startup into go-to-market strategies for trading platforms now. So learning every day, but that's kind of what's fun about being an entrepreneur is you get to consistently change. And, I think that's one of the most exciting things about my journey so far.
That's awesome. I mean, I think what I'm thinking right now is, don't fall in love with your startup idea because 90% of the time it's going to change in some way, shape, or form. And I love how just your journey started here and then you found, B2B play, weaved it into a successful acquisition. So congrats again, Jess. I'm rooting for you,
Thank
man.
you.
And
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to seeing what you do, after your earnout.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. And you guys sent me a t-shirt that I wear proudly. So it's been a pleasure chatting with you and continue to learn. So again, thank you just for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for the chat, Jess, and
Yeah.
best of luck with everything. Thanks for sharing all this. I really enjoyed this conversation and just everything you shared from just build it to just ship it, then refine it, and then when things aren't going correctly, be open to pivoting, and then just how the breakdown of how you sold the business I thought was excellent. So thank you for coming on the
Cool.
podcast.
See you later.
All right, man, take it easy.